Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhiraye. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12. Canto 1, Chapter 12, Text number 1. This starts the chapter, Birth of Emperor Parikshit. Shaunaku Vacha Ashvatam Na of Ashvatama Upashishtena by release of Brahmashirshna, the invincible weapon, Brahmastra. Urujejasa, by high temperature. Uttaraya, of Uttara, mother of Parikshit. Hataha, being spoiled. Garbha, womb. Ishena, by the Supreme Lord. Ajivita, brought to life. Puna, again. Shaunakuvacha, Ashvatamno Prashishtena, Brahmashir Norutejasa, Brahmashishno Rutejasa, Uttaraya Hatogarbha, Ishena Jivita Puna, Ishena Jivita Puna, Shaunakuvacha, Ashvataman no Prashishtena, Brahmashishno Rutejasa, Uttaraya Hatogarbha, Ishena Jivata Puna. Shonakuvacha Ashvatam no Prashishtena, Brahmashishno Rutejasa, Uttaraya Katogarbha, Ishena Jivata Puna. Vaishnavis. Shaunakuvacha Ashvatam no Prashishtena, Brahmashishno Rutejasa, Uttaraya Hatogarbha, Ishena Jivita Puna. Translation: the sage Shaunaka said, the womb of Uttara, mother of Maharaj Parikshit, was spoiled by the dreadful and invincible Brahmastra weapon released by Ashvatthama. But Maharaj Parikshit was saved by the Supreme Lord. Purport. The sages assembled in the forest of Naimisharanya inquired from Sutta Goswami about the birth of Maharishi Parikshit, but in the course of the narration, other topics like the release of the Brahmastra by the son of Drona, his punishment by Arjuna, Queen Kunti Devi's prayers, the Pandavas' visit to the place where Bhishma Dev was lying, his prayers, and thereafter the Lord's departure from Dwarka were discussed. His arrival at Dwarka and residing with the 16,000 queens, etc., were narrated. The sages were absorbed in hearing such descriptions, but now they wanted to turn to the original topic, and thus the inquiry was made by Shaunaka Rishi. So the subject of the release of the Brahmastra weapon by Ashwatthama is renewed. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Sadvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gaur Premanande Haribol. Shaunaka Rishi is the senior member of the assembly at Naimisharanya. Therefore, he was mentioned earlier in the Bhagavatam. He is mentioned earlier. And it's the protocol in an assembly when one is greeting an exalted speaker, as were the sages greeting Sutta Goswami at Naimisharanya. Sutta Goswami was a replacement because his father, Romaharshan, had not shown respect to Balaram. Balaram had appeared at that assembly, Naimisharanya, and he had not stood up or shown any form of respect to Balaram when he had come into the assembly. And Balaram noticed that. The speaker of the Bhagavatam is qualified because that speaker considers him or herself to be a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and not independently knowledgeable or worthy of speaking, but simply an instrument. So when Romaharshan's respect was conspicuous by its absence. Balaram then remembered also that Romaharshan was from a mixed caste. Otherwise, he might not have noticed. And in order to clear the way for somebody who is actually qualified to speak at Naimisharanya, Balaramji picked up a piece of kusha grass and he tapped Romaharshan with it and thus killed him. Such is the power of Balaram. Sages lamented because they had previously given a benediction of long life to Guru Maharshan so that he could go on speaking. After all, it was quite a long seminar they were holding, 1,000-year seminar. And then Balaram suggested that that same benediction be transferred to Guru Maharshan's son, Sutta Goswami, which is bona fide by Shastra because the son is known to be the representative of the father. Not only that, Sutta Goswami, as the sages note in the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, Somyata, the Sutta Goswami was a gentle person, and so much so that he had pleased his gurus, and he had imbibed the complete philosophy and thus understanding of the topic of the Srimad Bhagavatam. From them, it was qualified to speak. So in that assembly, you find in the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, this Shaunaka Rishi stands up to speak on behalf of all the sages. And Prabhupada notes in his purport that this is the etiquette, that the senior-most and a very learned person must be the one to greet the representative speaker in the assembly. And so Shaunaka Rishi here, we find here and elsewhere that he appears in the dialogue of the Srimad Bhagavatam as one of the moderators who's bringing the subject matter at hand. Of course, it had branched into many topics relating to Parikshit Maharaj, but now it's coming back to the topic they had asked about previously. And so Shaunaka Rishi is asking or mentioning that the womb of Uttara, mother of Maharaj Parikshit, was spoiled by the dreadful and invincible Brahmastra weapon released by Ashvatthama. So then Maharaj Parikshit was saved. So the topic in general of Parikshit Maharaj's appearance in the world is of great interest because he's not only a great devotee of the Lord, but he was personally saved by the personality of Godhead when he was in the womb. And as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paripasate tesham nityabdhyuktanam yogakshemam mahamyaham. For those who are fully absorbed in my service with no other consideration, I personally take care and I protect such devotees. This is very much the case of the protection that Lord Krishna gave to Maharaj Parikshit within the womb. Ashvatthama was the son of Dronacharya, and in an attempt to gain some ground in the Battle of Kurukshetra, just afterwards he had killed the 5 sleeping sons of the Pandavas. And then he had reported this to his guru, who was extremely distraught by this. And furthermore, he then became an outlaw who was being pursued by Arjuna. Draupadi, obviously, the mother, was disconsolate. And to appease her, Arjuna had said that, I will catch this rascal, this culprit, and I will cut off his head. And then you can take your bath standing on his head for revenge. So, during this interim period, Ashvatthama was very recklessly throwing nuclear weapons around. One of them he had aimed at the womb of Uttara. He wanted to kill off the last descendant of the dynasty. And this was the son of Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu, the great hero, one of the great heroes of the Mahabharata, had been killed really unfairly by the gang of Kauravas, who had specifically arranged to cut him off from the rest of the armies and surround him, really kind of in an ambush. And he had died. But Uttara, normally, of course, at that time, a wife would follow the husband into the funeral pyre, feeling so much separation from the husband, but Uttara had a duty to do because it was known that she was already pregnant. And that pregnancy was with Parikshit Maharaj. Now Parikshit is in the womb at Ashvatthama. He also threw a Brahmastra weapon, which from the descriptions we hear can be thrown precisely in a certain place. And that was the womb of Uttara. So the radiation from that destroyed her womb, but Krishna personally appeared there. And by his unlimited power, he protected the embryo, who was Parikshit, from the heat of the Brahmastra. And one of the reason that he is called Parikshit is because after seeing Krishna within the womb, he was so fascinated that Parikshit means the examiner. He was always looking again to see that image of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, of course, Uttara was saved, Parikshit was saved, and there's a way in which Arjuna, after catching Ashvatthama, had bound him up with ropes, and then was to punish him. But then there was a difference of opinion. Bhima said, "You should kill him right away. You already promised you'd kill him." Draupadi changed her mind. She said, "I know what it feels like to have my son killed, so I don't want the mother of Ashvatthama to feel the same lamentation." And then Krishna weighed in, and he said, by way of gesture, actually he didn't say, but he gestured to Arjuna that he'll have to satisfy both sides. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that to keep the two sides at bay, because they were arguing with each other, he had to manifest an extra 2 arms. So he was there in a 4-arm form during the dispute. Arjuna, being very intelligent, disciple of Krishna, then intuited what Krishna had in mind. How do you solve such a problem when the sides seem at polar opposites? Actually, Braja Bihari Prabhu gave a class to us recently in Mayapur about how many problems aren't to be solved, they're to be managed. And so Arjuna, this is called polarity management. He managed the situation by making a shastrika, a distinction of killing a Brahmin. He said, well, you're not supposed to kill a Brahmin, but on the other hand, he deserves to die, and I already promised I'd kill him. But now Draupadi changed her mind. Bhima is insisting, so what do I do? So he took his sword up, and he swung it, and he cut off the jewel that was attached to the hair of Ashvatthama. And this was taking away his Brahminical status without killing his body. And therefore the author, the Bhagavatam, says that thus he achieved both at the same time. So, as to the significance of the birth of Parikshit, we'll hear later in this chapter the panegyrists and those who are aware of the glory and magnificence of Parikshit and what he will do in the future begin glorifying him and his stature. But we get a sense how important it is that there's actually a strong leader. And the Bhagavatam, of course, there have been strong leaders in the past, but the Bhagavatam is especially concerned with Parikshit Maharaj because he's not only a strong leader, but a pure devotee. And this is a perfect combination because, as Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, his mission Pritranaya sadhanam vinashaya chadushkritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavam yuge yuge is to cut down irreligion and to lift up the devotees. It's really apparent these days when there's a lack of state leadership in the world that people are disappointed often. I mean, they're so used to it, however, they just take it for granted that leaders will be bad and that will let them down. But it doesn't help the social fabric when there's a disappointment in leaders. And on the other hand, when a great leader appears, who's a pure devotee, and who also is strong in leadership and knows what to do and what not to do, as Parikshit did. For instance, who would have thought if you had run into Kali yourself, that you would make a deal with him, that he could stay in any place where there was hoarding of gold or any of the other sinful activities. Had you thought of that before? Making such a deal with Kali? But Parikshit Maharaj knew exactly what to do, and he also was very strong in chastising Kali. So the appearance of Parikshit Maharaj is significant because he has the same mission as Krishna. And Krishna depends on his kings, for instance, Yudhishthira and Parikshit, in order to bring order into the world. It's extremely important. In the absence of such a leader in the world today, we're sort of left with spreading the Sankirtan movement as vigorously as possible and hoping for the intervention of the Lord and through his various energies in whatever way possible. If, however, there were such a strong personality in place who understood dharma and was willing to stand up for it, wouldn't it be wouldn't we feel a different kind of enthusiasm? Say yes. Yeah, we definitely would. If Parikshit was running for president, we'd probably get a campaign voting, and somebody on Facebook would criticize him also, saying they'd find something wrong with him somewhere. And that's the bane of any leader, is no matter what you do, someone will find something wrong with it somewhere. And those are a few sort of introductory comments, some of them random, but we find in the purport here that that's permissible. In the purport, it's discussed that the question came up about Parikshit Maharaj much earlier, and here we are many chapters later, and they diverted into many different topics, all of them spiritual. And so in the time that was allotted to me, which it's over now, right? Or in 10 minutes. So that gives us some time for some reflections or questions. Yes, Pancharatna Prabhu.
This is a indication of my ignorance, but I'm a little confused about the chronology, because Parikshit Maharaj heard the Bhagavatam from Sukadeva, and Sutta was present, correct?
Yes.
Then this whole jugya is taking place, and Balaram appears, but when Parikshit hears the Bhagavatam, it appears that Krishna has already departed, because the Bhagavatam describes his departure. But Balaram is coming into the scene later on. So, how is this sequence going on here? Balaram continues to stay on the planet for some time in order to come and be...
No, Balaram and Krishna left at Prabhas. That's described in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Their departure for the spiritual world, the incident at Prabhas. The Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu explains how, or actually in his commentary on the Tattva Sandarbha, that the Srimad Bhagavatam, although it appears to be, there are chronological steps that are being laid out in the Bhagavatam. He says it's in eternal scripture. That's the opinion of Jiva Goswami, that the verses are the same whenever it's being presented, because it's actually, each one of the verses is eternally existing. And therefore, when it's spoken in the same way. Reflections or questions?
No matter what we may try, this is the material world, as we're talking about the president's position or any higher authority's position, it's very difficult to satisfy. Is that the same way since in the spiritual world there is also competition, between the gopis to satisfy Krishna? Is that the same way it works?
If I understood you correctly, you said there's a sense of competition within the material world?
Yeah. We can't satisfy, when someone is in a higher position, and then these people expect that is to satisfy everybody, but it's difficult. It's not possible. Likewise, in the spiritual world, there is also competition. That goes the same way.
Well, Prabhupada explains that there's a similar competition in spiritual circles, but there's no inebriety. That means that there's not a sense of envy. Although there may be competition, there's a way in which when somebody does better than another in devotional service, the person who has been defeated, as appreciating that someone did better than me, and it encourages them to try to increase their service. Whereas in a material sense, people become despondent when they're defeated by others and so forth. But the competition is always there, even in the spiritual world. This is one of the ways in which there is rasa, or a taste, that comes from, of course, it's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that there's a competition between Radharani and Krishna. When Radharani increases her qualities and beauty, then Krishna increases his, and there's always a competition. And then, of course, there are rival parties that are competing for Krishna's attention in his various groups. However, the point is that there's no acrimony or a sense of envy of the other, even though there's competition. This is something where Kaviraj Goswami explains, for instance, the difference between love and lust. He said they look very much the same, but they're very different. He said it's like the difference between gold and iron. Lust is like iron and love is like gold. You might say they're both metals, but the quality is very different. So the quality of the competition is very different. Yes, Prabhu.
There was a big competition between, in the spiritual world, there was a big competition between Radharani and Chandravali. Chandravali was rightist and Radharani is leftist. So there was a big competition who could satisfy Krishna. So who was more dear to Krishna, Chandravali or Radharani?
What do you think? Radharani is described by the Bhagavatam itself as the one person who's most dear to Krishna. This is Aradhanam. And this is actually clear evidence for Radharani. She's not mentioned specifically by name, but her name is taken from the proclamation that there is one particular gopi who pleases Krishna more than the others. And in the Goswami literatures, there are more details of this. For instance, that in some of the performance of Rasa dance, Lalita holds Radharani back from coming right away. She said, you should be fashionably late. And Krishna spends time bantering with the other gopis because he's not willing to do the Rasa dance without Radharani. So ultimately there's no question, although Krishna consorts with others in order to create this kind of friction, and sometimes when Krishna comes to see Radharani, she, or more likely her friends, say, go away, she doesn't want to see you now. So, in any case, the verdict of the Bhagavatam and of all the Goswamis is ultimately that Radharani is the queen of Vrindavan. Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
Prabhu, in Vedic times, monarchy was considered the best form of government. So, from a Vedic perspective, today, even kings are corrupt. Just everywhere everyone's corrupt in government, more or less. So, from a Vedic perspective, what would the best form of government be now in Kali Yuga? Or does it not matter and it's just focus on spreading the Sanatana movement, as you mentioned?
He has to reiterate what you're saying or to expand upon it. The Bhagavatam goes into great detail, especially going into we see in the 12th canto, about the degradation of kings. The kingships become more and more degraded. This is the precursor to the degradation of the entire society, because when the leaders become bad, then everything becomes bad. And it becomes worse and worse in Kali Yuga as things progress. I don't notice that there's any end in sight. I haven't noticed that the leadership is showing any promise of improving. But your question really is, what's the ideal? Prabhupada mentions several things. One is that it's important to establish varnashrama in society. Varnashrama really, having a clear varnashrama really does require having leadership that is keeping the distinctions and helping those who are in particular categories to progress towards God consciousness. And at the same time, he also mentions that it's very difficult in the age of Kali, or practically impossible, and that we should really take shelter of the process of Harinam Sankirtan and expanding the Sankirtan movement and so forth. But there's no real indication that there's a time in Kali Yuga that some king is going to emerge, nor does it seem quite possible at this point. So the admonition that Prabhupada gives, make the best use of a bad bargain, and take the two instructions that he gave, try to establish varnashrama as much as possible, and continue the Sankirtan movement, seem to be the best that we have right now to continue. I hope you don't find that disappointing, but
Thank you.
yeah. And now we've come to the end of our allotted time, because today's a very busy day. There will be an initiation ceremony coming up. What's next on the agenda?
Initiation.
Right now? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Maharaj Prakshit ki jai, Gaur Premanande Haribo. Panchakalpadurvishya Kripasinabhevacha Patitanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.